Hi, I'm Nana Kay, and this is my Wacky Writer Life, where I chronicle my journey through the self-publishing space. I'm a self-published author, as well as the writer and creator of the Resonant Voice Collection, which is a growing self-published collection of my literary works, media, and art that seek to explore all aspects of the human experience and bring hard conversations to the surface of the social consciousness. If this sounds like something that strikes a chord in you, considering following my content for more. It's been a hot minute since the previous episode in the series, but that's because for the past several months, I've been in promotion mode for the Resonant Voice collection and my first book publication of the collection, Shades Drawn Back. And a lot has happened, which I'm hoping to share here in time. I'm also working on my next literary publications in addition to other projects I'm working to launch in the collection in the coming months. I wanted to relaunch this series sooner, but ended up taking a bit of a hiatus from the series, which ended up being beneficial for me because I started a few projects within the collection that will continue to bring value to the collection as a whole. So far, I'm proud to say that 2023 has been a great year for laying down a lot of the foundational groundwork for the collection. Sometimes we just need those times to either refocus, regroup, or stretch ourselves in new ways, I guess. In this episode of my Wacky Writer Life, I wanted to talk about my thought process behind why I decided to create the poems I did for my book, Shades Drawn Back, in rhyme. First off, for those of you who have bought a copy already, thank you for the support. It really does mean a lot, and I hope my words continue to resonate with you. You may notice that most of my poems employ some sort of rhyme scheme. I do want to preface that I'm not much of a stickler when it comes to literary rules. The same also goes for poetry. When I learned the rules behind rhyme schemes in iambic pentameter in school, I found it more enjoyable stretching or even breaking those rules entirely, especially if it's for the sake of creating something meaningful. Even so, I still have my patterns, like how a good chunk of my poems have every other line end on a rhyme, for instance. A lot of the poems in my first book were inspired by the arrangement of song lyrics found in hip-hop, rap, and R&B, so as you read them, they are very much rhythmic in nature. Not only that, but it was those influences that inspired me to create my poetry in different patterns of rhyme. I felt that through rhythm and rhyme, words had a better way of sticking in a reader's mind. That's probably why so many of us can remember Dr. Seuss passages even though we were exposed to them when we were children. However, as I was getting the very first draft of my book initially reviewed, I was cautioned by a couple of people about how I may not want to write so many of my poems in rhyme if I wanted to sell more. But interestingly enough, I decided to write many of my poems in rhyme anyway. It's not that I didn't consider that advice, because of course, with there being an investment component in publishing a book, I believe it's important to consider the market. That advice led me to do some pulse checks via online searches just to see what critics were saying about rhyme poetry in general. The overall consensus was that rhyme poetry was thought to seem juvenile and undeveloped. And I just thought, who died and made all these dry minds ruling bodies on creative expression? And of course I wasn't biased, right? Maybe their words of contempt were inspired by old nursery rhymes and they therefore reviewed any type of content with rhyme in the same manner, who knows? But I thought about the rhyme and music lyrics that is revered across all music genres. Like, what about that example? They might as well be poetry of a different feather. Does the fact that they have rhyme make them unworthy of appreciation? Clearly not. So why should my poetry be any different? While I had that edge of stubbornness to reject the notion of rhyme being considered juvenile, part of me did wonder if I should consider revising my poetry pieces so most, if not all, were rewritten without rhyme. However, the more I reviewed my poetry pieces, the more I ultimately decided against it for a few different reasons. Firstly, when I originally wrote these poems, it was in its authentically raw form, and that form included rhyme. To extract that aspect from them felt like stripping those pieces of their character. I knew I was going to revise these poems a number of times before they got to print, but I ultimately wanted those revisions to be about enhancing the messages rather than making it more market friendly. Secondly, because of their rhythmic quality, they were written in the manner of spoken word or slam poetry. These were pieces inspired by music, and the types of rhymes I used became the signature that gave that rhythmic quality life. Thirdly, my poems were written around very, very heavy topics. Topics like social conflicts, societal norms, institutional corruption, and so on. I wanted to use rhyme to help balance out that tone and help make the meaning behind each poem more memorable. And we as humans are more apt to remember patterns. I figured that retaining that particular element meant a stronger overall message for the book. And lastly, it was way too much a headache than it proved to be worth to me to go ahead and figure out how to rewrite all of these different poetry pieces without rhyme. And sometimes it's the headache that is all the reason you need to just rethink your position. While marketability is important, especially in self-publishing, it should not be the only thing that drives the meaning and integrity of our work. We must consider trends in the market are ever changing. What's popular today may not be popular tomorrow, or vice versa. As long as there exists a passion and intention behind our creative decisions, I believe we can find an audience and create works that they will want to read. Always consider the long-term game. To all my fellow writers and readers, I hope my experience today has resonated with you and inspired you to daringly explore your own creativity. I look forward to continuing my evolution as a writer, exploring all styles, genres, and topics in the literary space.